ashes burn in the still of the night. It's our turn.
Still working on a couple things. Oh. Okay. Did you get my PM there, Red Dragon?
Let me check. Yes.
All right, we're going in. We're going in for this match right now. We're resourcing and we're ready to start round 5 action. Okay, and we'll be getting Red Dragon and face cam in here momentarily. Quill coming in, followed by an open fire. The mitigation has begun for Bossk Blue. And an A-wing coming down. So Red Dragon coming to us from Maclunky Gaming. Definitely a solid group of players over there at Maclunky. So lucky to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me. So, game's underway. Seems like it's going relatively well for Bossk right now. Client setup is a pretty big play for a lot of control decks. Once they stabilize, it allows them to start regaining all the health lost.
Okay.
Bossk with a bounty onto Green Squadron A-Wing. A-Wing is going to hit for the 3, bring the damage up to 6, so now the bounty can be fully claimed. Double bounty with Bossk, potentially.
Just working on some technical stuff here. And it looks like we've got Red Dragon. Say hello to Red Dragon. Got his face in there.
Hello.
And so Maclunky Gaming. Do you want to just do a quick little introduction while we
Yes.
view this match here? Tell us about your channel there.
Absolutely. Maclunky Gaming is a team based out of the Northeast. We've had a couple showings across the Northeast PQs, including the Rochester PQ, won by Philip, and top aided, or no. Yeah, Rochester was won by Philip. Drawn in top 8 by Philip with another member of Clunky Gaming that I do not remember the name of, along with top 8 finishes in the Flipside PQ, and then Philip's win in the Red Seal PQ. So we've had a lot of tournament representation there, as well as streaming across many of those events in the Northeast for the most part.
That looks like a Rivals fall on Bossk. Solid play there from Anakin. Keep going.
It is looking pretty good for Bossk here. The Rivals fall kills the tempo for Anakin a little bit. Base damage is pretty non-existent for the time being, along with the client fully established with the shield still. So Anakin's not going to be able to take out the client, unfortunately, which seems pretty good for Bossk long run, assuming that they have a concise answer for Anakin on this turn.
It's, I think, one of the real questions in these blue hero kind of mid-rangey decks is how do you deal with a late game villain package? Like, do they have the answers for Avenger and Snoke and such?
Agreed. I think the client activate onto the Anakin makes sense. So he is seeming to plan to kill it. Since the Anakin's only hitting for 4, he does not gain the 1. But it is a big question on whether or not the heroism decks are able to beat the late game between Super Laser Blast for board clearing, Avenger to restabilize on whatever they decide to play on that turn, and the inherent lack of game closing, especially when the base is not on a lot of damage. Good 4 damage from open fire on the Anakin, setting it up to presumably removed by a second event here in a moment.
Looks like
So
maybe
ping from Bossk.
maybe a takedown or something like that.
Might be a takedown. Might be. He puts it in daring raid range with the 1 more damage, but he seems to be waiting to decide how to kill it. Seems like that might be a blood sport, so 2 damage to everything.
Definitely,
So pops his own shield.
definitely
Gets the
not
Anakin.
exactly how the boss drew it up, but he'll take it, clearing that Anakin.
Very correct. It does make the Luke kill the client, which was kind of being set up for, but not the worst case scenario.
Especially if we have Super Laser Blast in hand here, just clear this out and start over.
True. Boss ideal right now is probably Super Laser into a follow-up Avenger, so he has the Super Laser. We'll see how Anakin is able to repopulate the board. So he gets the...
It's that Mandalorian ship to grab an upgrade, and then drops Anakin's ship. Razor Crest, that's what it's called.
So it gets back the perilous position, which can be good on the Avenger to tap it for a turn, but it is not going to be able to put it in range of takedown. I can see the Bossk Blue does have a second Super Laser as well as an Avenger in hand.
Anakin would be wise to not overcommit to this board. Okay, the Avenger coming in.
Avenger's a good play here. It's going to answer one of the 2 space units. And then if Avenger does get vanquished, you'll get a claim into potentially another Super Laser if Anakin dedicates a lot, which he is kind of in the need of dedicating some units, with his base only being, with the boss player's base only at 7 damage.
So what does Bossk Blue gain from set 3? Have you done any analysis on this list or on this archetype?
Not extensively. It gains the perilous position, which is helpful. Potentially, it gains equalize for 5 resources mainly from the sideboard, as it's helpful in the Django space side matchup. But the additional -2/-2 cards are very good for balancing out lurking TIE silencers for their bad matchups.
Yeah, you
But I
haven't
don't
seen
know-
as much Phantom out there with that Perilous. People are a little spooked on that.
Yeah. Perilous is very good at solving the silencer or just tapping a big thing for 1 turn and making it a much more reasonable body. So a Smuggle Cassian following up after Cruel to get the 3 damage on base. The Avenger is set to kill the space unit potentially. Then the fight will turn to ground for the Bossk and Anakin players.
Probably not necessary to do the second blast in this circumstance. Maybe kill
not yet,
that
for sure.
Razor Crest, wait for a couple more units to come out and try to catch him with it.
The
Anakin,
Avenger is going to attack the unit.
obviously, like Anakin inherently is kind of almost like a little bit of a control guy himself. Like he wants to maintain board control and kill some early units and things like that, use his ability. And that's a little bit negated in this matchup. So you're just trying to figure out exactly what the Anakin's able to do to kind of turn the corner.
We are getting a deck count from the Anakin player.
I can try to get a counter back up. I was a little distracted before. So let me see what I can do there for us on that. I don't have an exact time. I think we've been going for maybe about 15 minutes or so if I had to kind of ballpark it.
So we got the bounty onto the cruel, set up removal, and the draw 2 from the Bossk. Anakin is taking the opportunity to add potentially a Poe. It is going to be a Poe. So choosing to do that before attacking with the Cassian. Bloodsport's going to add 2 damage to everyone. So the boss ping will finish off and collect the bounty to draw 2. Bossk with like 5 cards in hand, 2 of them appearing to be super lasers. Yes, the Avenger does get to destroy a non-leader unit, but it did attack at a space unit, and the attack at the space unit caused him to use the on-attack trigger to sack the attacked space unit. This takedown will clean up the Poe, so the board is pretty stable now for the Bossk player. The Avenger looks to clean up the Cassian after the attack potentially.
Yeah, I just don't.
Resource from the Bossk player.
I just don't really see a way to kind of recover from this. It's tricky.
Agreed. It is not looking good for heroism, especially with double super laser. Even if he's able to take down the Avenger with something, then
You saw 2 super lasers in hand?
yeah, I saw 2 super lasers in the back of his hand. Can't quite make out anything else currently, but with a follow-up to the Avenger and a seeming lack of removal for the Anakin on the Avenger, is not looking ideal. The ship was not a Sentinel. He did just opt to attack, I believe. So a perilous position on the Avenger, which is going to keep the Cassian alive for the time being. And it's responded with another perilous position, putting the Cassian down to a 1/3 with 2 damage on it. So ideally the Bossk would like to put a bounty on it, which is going to be top target, and clean it up with the Bossk activated.
Yeah, we're getting into scoop it up so we have time to win 2 games territory here for Annie.
Yes. With the death mark applied for the draw 2 coming up, I do agree with that. Not looking ideal at all for Bossk. Excuse me, for Anakin. Draw 2, regain 6.
I just don't
Avenger's
see.
still going at it.
I just don't see in the color palette unless he's got a sideboard with maybe hand hate or something like that. I don't know.
He's hoping to get to force throw. I don't know if he has pillage's main board. We haven't seen any of them from the Anakin player this game, this match, or the previous. But even so, the death marks have kept the hand plentiful. It's seeming like Bossk is opting to stop resourcing now. And the client established is going to mean that he's very quickly going to get down to 0 damage on base.
Yeah, we are just burning clock at this point.
Agreed. Though it does highlight the importance of control players having ways to close the game. The Avenger is a good way of doing it. It will have to attack a Sentinel this turn. Probably after the client activates on it. Yep. Client activate. Sentinel gets in for 1. Not the best card for this matchup. Very good in the Django match. Another perilous position will keep a unit alive. Instead, Avenger is down to a 4/4, which puts it in takedown range.
We're chipping away at that Avenger. It's just there's probably another one in the hand, you know. It's like
Yeah.
we're hoarding those. We're hoarding Avengers and Blasts and Snokes and all that kind of stuff.
So Vanquish to enable claiming the bounty, going down to 10 health. Yoda does not seem like it's going to be able to apply enough pressure to actually start closing this game, unfortunately. But he is populating the board, as Super Laser is probably not going to be coming out from the Bossk player as long as Avenger client is set up.
Got some interesting lines with like Sabine being able to get that shield off of there and then being able to hit in.
Anakin activation on Sabine could put client to 1 health, lines it up for the potential to have it die in the future. The Avenger did attack the space unit, and the restore arc was then sacked to the on attack trigger. So the Avenger stays healthy, but the Anakin player has more units to continue attacking with. So Yoda's going into base for 2, so he's choosing to ignore the client still. Seems like a bounty onto Sabine will enable the Bossk player to return down to 10 health if he gets hit by this Sabine after this. Bossk player appears to have a Vigilance prepared in hand to kill the Sabine, but it will be a question of is he going to mill or will he restore 5 more? So he started with a death mark, the third one. So it'll be the last card advantage the deck has access to for this game.
What do you think here, heal or mill? What's your evaluation of the current state of things?
With an established client, I would opt for mill, especially now that the Avenger died the action prior. I don't think that... I mean, he's going to go down to 10 damage on base after the client activates, and I think having a way to start aggressively closing out the game is better. But he will opt for the 5 health. Super lasers give a lot of insurance for now, it appears. Infinite perilous position, it seems, as a second Razor Crest brings back the one of the 2 that were played.
Yoda kind of helping, you know, soften the blow of the Super Laser Blast with the card draw he enables.
Card replacement will be helpful. The amount of cards in the Bossk player's hand is pretty scary for the deck. It does seem that one of them may be a restock, which is a little weaker in this kind of matchup. Although it may not be. Can't quite make it out.
I did see gray flash in there, and he had it in the front.
So I was going to be in for 2, getting him back to 7 for about the 3rd time this game. It's really unfortunate for the heroism decks to try to close out against control. So the second Super Laser of the game will come up, clean up the board, cause a draw from the Yoda for the Anakin player, clear the client, and claim the bounty the client placed on in the previous action.
I don't know what that card is.
I don't know the name, but it does get back an upgrade from discard and plays it. So he gets another death mark out to continue the card advantage this game. Another Kanan. So a Kanan after the Village Protectors. The shield will come off with the Bossk activation, seeming to line up something like Daring Raid. Clear that, draw the 2. Board is down to just Kanan. Planning to save the Super Laser Blast for later, it appears. Use just a targeted removal, as his health is pretty high. Chat has pointed out a Fine Edition is the card that brought back the Death Mark. So I can see another Avenger, which, after the Kanan attack, I presume that will be the planned play from Bossk to start closing out the game. Kanan milled a Fine Edition from the Bossk player.
Just back to that mill. I mean, we were pretty stable, and we chose to heal. And it's like the card, the deck count is pretty relevant this deep into this game.
Agreed. I think the mill strat is something that is often undervaluated in matchups outside of control, despite the ability for control decks to deck out mid-range decks oftentimes with the amount of card for card removal you are playing. He has opted to not play the Avenger and go 1-for-1. Seems the card I thought was restock was a Pillage. So Pillage down to 1 card. Anakin plays his last for it to be a Poe. The Bossk player is seeming to speed up his gameplay a little bit in an effort to avoid time. As if this match goes to game 3, it's something control always has to be conscientious of.
Fell the dragon on the Poe. We still need to get some threats on the board at some point here. Establish a win condition.
Agreed.
And we've seen
Bossk
Anakin
has drawn more cards.
We've seen Anakin running some, I think we saw Vanquish and Ravel's Falls and this and that. So maybe he's able to kind of clear out these late game answers.
I think Bossk's main plan now should be to either mill. I would opt as my main win to be mill from this position and use my Avengers as removal. Because if you play an Avenger to remove 1 unit and force them to vanquish it or rivals fall it, they end up being so much slower, and you're forcing them to prioritize keeping removal into a matchup that they need to be the aggressor. So I think beginning the mill chain early, I did like, although he is at a very healthy 6 damage on base. So there was the advantage that the 5 health kept him alive. Seems a question from the judge on Merciless Contest, I believe is the name of the card, where it says each player chooses a non-leader unit and defeats them. And I assume the question was whether or not it works when the player playing it doesn't have a unit. So it does. It is the effect of Power of the Dark Side when no units are in play.
Yeah, kind of a poor man's Power of the Dark Side.
Agreed. Looks like deck count is around 8 to 10 for the Bossk player, and I would say somewhere around 14-ish for the Anakin player. Bossk has the main board restocked. There is the potential for restock looping once the deck runs out, which would be even harder for the Anakin deck to be able to win from that position.
I don't think there's any way to get that restock out of the hand either.
So it seems he did just draw the restock. Yep, definitely drew it this time. Anakin, yeah, Force Throws presumably are in the main, but 1 card will not be enough to gut the hand of the restock. And Vigilance is unlikely to see main board play in Anakin decks, which means there's no way to mill it. Although if a Kanan's in play, there's a chance a Kanan could knock it off the top. It seems unlikely that unit would stay in play though. by this point.
And we're had halfway time here, 30 minutes in. I don't know. It's tricky. But I don't
Definitely
see,
tricky.
yeah, I don't see necessarily the next game going like this. Anakin's not like an aggro deck. It's not gonna be able to like get underneath this thing. It's gonna have to fight this battle on the Bossk's terms.
Agreed. One of their best options is establishing Anakin, as it doesn't die to many things with a lightsaber, but it's difficult when Anakin lands only 2 turns before Super Laser, which is enough to have the leader potentially kill. But between Perilous Position, Power of the Dark Side, Rival's Fall, and the boss coming out the turn earlier to help stabilize and remove other units on the field, it is very hard.
All right, now we're cooking
Anakin-
with gas here.
So he's going to scoop to the Krite Dragon, as he will be dead in probably 1 turn after that readies. So it does look like we lost a lot of time in that match. I don't know if it would be right for Anakin to scoop early, as I don't know. It's hard. He's going to need 3 games to be able to win this. So there is a mindfulness in scooping there, but there is an argument that control is unlikely to ever be able to close out a 3rd game. You could if you win game 2, it would end up being either I win or we both lose. Although both losing is never good for either player's breakers. So
Yeah, there's almost you're disincentivized, I think, to get the double loss from the breaker standpoint, right? Like
very much so, especially when we have 2 players at, I believe it's 4-0 at this point.
because then your opponent that you just played against, that it matters what their record is for your breakers. Like you don't want them to have the loss. It's definitely very interesting, this whole situation.
It definitely keeps contention all the way through all the rounds, and it prevents the 5-0 people from being able to double draw in 7-round events, which has been very relevant in the gameplay so far. Oftentimes they are just about locked based on the fact that their breakers are so good, but a double loss at any point doesn't help your breaker, because instead of having an opponent at 100% win rate, you're going to have an opponent at that 80 in this case, which not beneficial for anyone. Bossk player seems like he knows exactly what he wanted to board in this matchup. Boarded very quickly. Anakin is taking a little more time to decide what to cut.
Be back.
I think heroism decks have some options. Discard's a little harder with a lack of K2 in Anakin's deck, but there's the potential that pillage would be enough resources lost to merit playing sideboard. I would assume we are going to see a tech at some point in game 2 to give Anakin more ability to continue playing cards, but there's no real way to insulate the tech from hand removal saved for it the way Double Yellow Han is able to with Spark and whatnot. The boss player will begin drawing his hand while the Anakin player shuffles up. Anakin, while the initiative in game 2, Bossk player is up in the first game. So it appears both players have decided to keep and are deciding resources. Anakin will start with a Cruel to have a chance to draw some extra cards. The death mark will be placed on it, and 1 damage will ping down from the Bossk. Star Wars Unlimited released in March of this year. I believe it was March, early this year, so it's about 6 to 8 months old by this point. The Cruel attack will draw an Obi-Wan, putting 2 damage on the base of the Bossk player. Bossk will put a second ping, lining up for it to kill next turn with the activation. But a Bloodsport will come down now instead, applying 2 damage to the Yoda, claiming the bounty. And Anakin's claim will send us to turn 3. Bossk looks in a fine position, 2 damage on base. Not the worst. Going to depend on Anakin's turn 4 to see how well Bossk is able to manage going into his leader's flip turn. So during raid, we'll clean up the Yoda, leaving 3 resources for the Bossk player, lining up potentially a Merciless Contest or a Power of the Dark Side to kill the unit played. It will be a 1/5 space, Concord Dawn Interceptors. Not an ideal card in this matchup. Doesn't apply much pressure. We will see a fine edition coming out once more to bring the death mark back. And a ping of 1 damage from the Bossk player. Bossk has had many answers for what Anakin has done so far. The Bossk flip currently doesn't really answer anything, but does give the chance of a double bounty claim to draw 4 cards. That is a fair point. Anakin's activation, just to increase his damage, so the leader flip will bring out something stronger than a 4/7. Gives a better clock on the leader flip, which I think there's merit in, since the deck does have to be very aggressive, and it wants to be more of a mid-range deck in most games. So he's thinking about the attack, but seems to be deciding to play a unit. So he's going to tap 3 resources, and it is a red 3 coming out to line up the extra damage with the interceptors. The interceptors will get the raid 1 from the red 3, get in for 2 damage after the Bossk flips. 5 Vanquish on the Concord Dawn interceptors to draw the 4 cards with the Bossk double bounty claim. That will be the only play from Bossk this turn, but he will hit with a leader. I think this matchup showcases the worst matchup for the Anakin deck. Not much ability for Anakin to close the game out early, and the late game just gets dominated by Super Laser Blast and Avengers, as well as a Krite Dragon to close out the game. We'll be on 6 resource turn now. Anakin will have the opportunity to flip into a pretty empty board, which is not ideal. There is a red 3 that the Bossk will not be able to kill for free. Red 3 will get in for 3. Got a top target coming down on the red 3 with a potential double claim. But there is a Rival's Fall for the Bossk this time. Merciless Contest will clear the red 3, draw Excuse me, no draw, just heal for the Bossk. Healing 6. Red 3 is the unique. Anakin chose not to flip off the chance of Power of the Dark Side, passing action for a claim by the Bossk deck. I think the saving flip was a good choice. There's a lot of lines that punish Anakin flipping and getting in for only 4 damage. So he starts out with a red 3, followed by a play of Savage. Savage Oppress, I believe is the card's name.
Savage Oppress or Savage, yeah, that's... So what happened there with that?
I believe...
Does he come in ready or something like that?
He comes in ready if you control fewer units. Okay. So he placed him in ready at first, but because of the unit himself, he does not have fewer. But it is a 7/7. It's coming down not ready, unfortunately. I think he was hoping it would ward off the Anakin. But he does threaten to kill the Anakin if the Anakin doesn't grab a lightsaber.
So there's a set 3 card in the Bossk blue deck. Curious or an interesting include. I'm curious to know exactly the thought process there, I guess. Just assuming your opponent has more units than you because you've been controlling, and so he can come in ready and maybe kill something priority target.
Agreed. I think the 2 best set 3 cards we've seen so far for Bossk is a Fine Edition, which gets to bring back both top targets and death marks, as well as Merciless Contest, which gives you an extra copy or 2 of Power of the Dark Side. Anakin did attempt a force throw on his opponent to try to discard something larger, but a Fine Edition came out dealing 0 damage. The Anakin will grab a Jedi lightsaber and get in for, I believe it's 7 damage. 8 with the red 3.
So we have to dodge a blast or dodge a, I don't know, Rival's Fall or something.
Seems so. The Savage Oppress, unfortunately, is not going to be able to kill the Anakin anymore, which is quite the downside. We will see the Super Laser killing Savage. Bossk does run Perilous Position. I believe it's in his hand currently. I think he did play one last game, so that does also come back with a Fine Edition. So it seems like it is a Fine Edition. We are going to see the K2 out from Anakin, which seems like he has a chance of discarding, but with the amount of cards in hand, I would say once that dies, it will be 3 damage to base. But Bossk is losing the board currently, resources up to 9. Seems he has a Vigilance among a handful of other removal spells as well. Anakin is down to, it seems like about 4 cards in hand. Takedown will kill the K2, and he will think if he wants to discard from the 6 cards or deal 3 damage to base.
You're able to get a good look there. It looks like a Crate Dragon in the back. It's going to be coming out pretty soon here.
Yeah. I think if the K2 chose discard, I would definitely consider discarding the Crate Dragon, as closing the game is something that can be done by Vigilance in a deck like this. But he is considering his options. Seems like he's tapping 4 for a takedown. Didn't quite have enough to use the Vigilance this turn. Another Sabine is a follow-up for the Anakin deck, along with an Obi-Wan.
Definitely placing threats. Just seeing if there's another blast in there. That 4/6 stat line dodging, some mitigation, can't be takedown, can't be felled. So it's kind of in between. I like those 4/X kind of guys.
Agreed. The 4/6 has been a very difficult one to answer for control decks. I think the addition of Merciless Contest gives you a couple more answers to it. But the Bossk deck can put on a bounty, ping, and put it in takedown range. Although we did just see 2 takedowns played. So it is going to be a vigilance for the kill and heal. Now it seems like he's hoping for the Obi-Wan attack and line up a merciless contest to clean the rest of the board up. So Anakin will attack for 4, putting base to 16. And the merciless contest will take out the Obi-Wan. Unfortunate position for Anakin from here. Less cards than his opponent in hand. It seems like one of them is a bravado, potentially. Definitely has a takedown. Yeah. 5 events in a unit does not spell a very good chance to win this match for Anakin. The second merciless contest of this game will take out the Obi-Wan. And we are pillaging the Anakin unit after the 2/2 was played, which is going to cause the discard of a force throw, and I believe it's a blue event. Unsure which one.
Kind of a weak turn there for the Anakin. Just didn't have a.
Yeah, Anakin's draws have been very poor so far. It seems like he got a Kanan as well as another event, which is not exactly where you want to be, especially with a client being established this turn. Removal on the client, I think, was very important here. But the crew will attack for 2 on base, mill the Cassian, which will not go to hand.
Yeah,
bounty will be put down.
Yeah, we're gonna start stabilizing here with client.
So after solving the board, it seems that the Bossk player will now put his health total back near starting, although maybe opting to try to close the game out instead. Interesting play. Aim to close the game with a Krite. There's going to be a follow-up from a Fell the Dragon, which will cause the Cruel to be removed and fire the bounty claimed for the turn.
So we are just a shout out to a couple of the partners here. So this match this tournament is taking place at Pastimes Games and Comics and Games in Chicago, Illinois. So thank you to the venue for hosting. And then obviously shout outs to all the other partners here. So thank you, obviously Red Dragon from Maclunky for helping out, and some of the other groups, TTI, is it Bothan, how do you say it? Bothan Network, something like that. And Late Night, obviously. I don't know how to pronounce that. It gets me.
Because we did have a Vanquish take out the Kanan after a client activation, which allowed Luke to kill the client. And another removal took the Luke off the board. We are at the point that the 2 players will most likely be going card for card with one another, which is not ideal for the Anakin deck. Especially with less cards in hand than the Bossk player.
Personally, I feel the pain of just the Anakin player here. It's like when stuff like this happens to me, I'm like, okay, what do I like? It makes me affect my entire deck building. Like, how do I beat this kind of thing as my starting point too? Sometimes it's like I go on a little bender of just I'm not gonna lose to that.
Understandable. I think we saw last set Han 2 Blue had a much better chance of winning these matches with their ability to curve out with K2 on turn 2, followed by a Pillage on turn 3. That guts the hand of most control decks. The insulation of Deathmark and Dr. Pershing as potentials in the control decks helped a lot, but I think the lack of that curve for Anakin makes it much harder for them to try to close the game. We will see a Krite Dragon though. It's a base with 12 health. It's not quite an auto win. You will see a client activation on the Krite Dragon. definitely one of the better cards to find on Anakin's side at this point. Seems like a super laser is being considered to answer the board. Don't think he has a removal spell that can kill the Krite directly.
Great, making this a little bit exciting.
Agreed. We're going to see a Vigilance come out to kill the Sabine.
He has to take 4. Opting not to super laser blast.
So it seems he gained 5 from the Vigilance, 5 from the Bounty Claim, and then took 4, net gaining 6 health, followed by a Power of the Dark Side, which he seemed to... Excuse me, the Bounty was on the Krite, which gains here, and he just gained the 5 from Vigilance, causing 1 damage added.
I think that was like the window there. We needed Anakin to have some other, just the 1 extra unit there to look like prevent that Power of the Dark Side play. But I think we probably just super laser blasted in that scenario.
Agreed. I think with the Krite here, a Fell causing 4 damage on the base, as Krite cannot hit space units. Second Restored Arc, solidifying space. I think Anakin's best bet early game is trying to go space, as there's less answers. The events can answer, but the Bossk flip is unable to do much about them. But I think with the addition of Perilous Position and Merciless Contest, there's a lot more turn 2 answers the deck can play. And the bounties give the Bossk deck the ability to just ping over the course of 3 turns to eventually kill the turn 1 play in a lot of situations. You'll see the 3rd Krite from the Bossk deck, I believe.
I'm not seeing a quick answer to that. Great.
Appears to have the Luke in hand that will answer the client potentially. But Luke does die to the Krite Dragon, I believe, on play.
A Poe. Doesn't he just die?
Poe thankfully is a 6/6.
Oh, okay.
So he'll take the 5 potentially, and I think he will just die to the client, but he opted for the damage to base. Bossk is prepared to end this game, being that he matches damage on base for 12 to 12, and then a Krite Dragon attack to base would put him at 22, or he can hit the Poe and overwhelm, which will give Anakin the chance to Luke it. So he's going to hit the Poe, overwhelm 4 damage, putting the base to 16. So we are getting a back and forth now.
We are at 7 minutes left though, and we're still in game 2 for the Anakin player, so
I do think the Avenger seals it, as Anakin is not the one playing Super Laser, unfortunately. But he will play it out until the end. So it seems the Anakin player is deciding on whether or not to play the Luke. believe he read the crate to see if it would survive or not. So he is considering the 7 resources. He's going to opt to tap 3 instead and play a Yoda. Alright, we'll deal 3 to base, bringing it to 17. Bossk will opt to ping the 1 damage. He is holding client back still, so he could apply a bounty, but I think there is no way for the targeted unit to be removed. But I also don't think Anakin has any way to win this game by this point. Seems Anakin is still considering. He has the 7 resources available for the Luke in hand, and a restored arc has died this phase to the Avenger play. He is going to opt to claim instead. Client will get in for the 2 damage to base. And we will see if an answer can be found for the Anakin player. Although I believe he's dead to everything.
I mean, he's
with
got the
the fel
Anakin ability with the heal to kill the crate. Yeah.
So he does go to 19. So it does give him an answer for Krite that doesn't cause him to take damage. He will take the 8 to base, putting him to 27. Anakin will be forced to claim here if he does not have removal for the Avenger. I guess not, since he's dead to the client as well, if he claims. So he does have to answer both of the units this phase. We know he has a Luke, which can answer the client. If he has 11 resources now, he may be able to fell the dragon on the Avenger, but we have seen 2 of those already. He's going to check his resource pool. There is a tech buried in there.
This is sort of like
he
checking
was hoping to use.
checking your hand in poker right before you're about to fold. Just make sure you didn't misread your cards.
Agreed. At this point, I believe the players are going through the motions as time has not yet run out. The Luke will land answering the client with 2 resources left. The Bossk player could claim to have lethal, but he will power the dark side, clear out the Luke, showing a dominant performance on board. But this does give Anakin a chance to draw a removal.
That decision happened really fast to there's the game. Okay.
Yes. I think the decision to play the power is kind of when you get to the point in a game where you're playing quickly from time constraints and you autopilot, you start to think just, I need to answer everything on board.
Mm-hmm.
And you start playing the event to remove before considering the fact of maybe I can just kill him or use the Avenger trigger to kill.
Yeah, just claim and win.